Hello, good afternoon. It's lunchtime on a Friday. That means it's Bants, Bikes and Being Female. It's put on by Cycling UK, the nation's charity dedicated for cyclists and cycling. So this is just one of the many things that we put on for everyone. This series is aimed at encouraging women cyclists to bridge that gender gap, to get more women into cycling and making sure that divide between men and women equals out a little bit in our sport. But Cycling UK do loads of great things for cyclists, including opening up off-road trails, campaigning to improve the highway code to make it safer for cyclists, and pushing MPs to have infrastructure for cyclists on roads as well. So do make sure you check us out a little bit more if you'd like to support our work. And remember that we are also here to support you in your cycling journey. This is episode 4 of our winter series of Bants, Bikes and Being Female, and today we're talking about motivation in the miserable months, because we know it can be pretty difficult to get your kit on and get out the door when it's raining and gloomy outside. But we've got a wonderful panel of guests who know a thing or two about cycling after years of experience across different disciplines. So we're going to be welcoming onto the screen now. Let's start with our regular Fran.
Hi, Anna.
Hey, how's it going?
Yeah, good, thanks. Good. Bit cold in the office, hence the woolly hat, but all okay, thanks.
Is that enough, that chilliness still not going to stop you from cycling today?
Definitely not. I had a day off midweek as well, and I've already been out and had a good long ride on Wednesday in what I call mizzle, like misty drizzle. So, no, you'll find me outside this winter.
Let's just keep on making up words. Love it. So just tell us a little bit about yourself, Fran. I know most people watching this know you already, but for anyone who's tuned in for the first time.
Yeah, so I'm Fran. I work for Vela Vixen as the operations manager. We're an online women's cycle retailer aiming to be that one-stop shop for all things female cycling related. My personal background in cycling is I've been riding for 25 plus years, started in the mountain bike field. Now, normally I'd be racing cross all winter, but that's been cancelled, and road riding, pretty much anything except any indoor cycling, as we've discovered on these chats. No track or computer game Zwifty turbos for me.
Well, on the flip side of that, let's welcome Charlene on then.
Hello there. Hi, I'm Charlton Jones. Fran, look at you, try to pretend like it's snowing down south. We had a snowstorm and it was great until I had to go out this morning and do my boot camp in it, and I was freezing, but I did it. Still went outside, motivated. See, that's what today's all about, getting outside. But anyway, I am a fitness expert, so I am very good at motivating everyone to do exercise. I can give you some tips to get outside, but a lot of it is self-motivation. So really excited to hear what everyone else's tips are going forward. But what I do now, I used to be a professional cyclist, and now I have my online program, which is HIIT, so high intensity interval training, yoga, Pilates, lots of movement and mobility. And yes, so we're really smashing the online world now, as we've been forced to do over the past kind of year, haven't we?
That is 2020, isn't it? Yeah, definitely all about that. And then Vicky, do you want to come on and say hello? Another one of our regulars now. Who are you here from, and what are you representing?
Hi, so yeah, I'm Vicky. I run my own business called Vicky Bikes, where I teach mechanics and also promote inclusive cycling and basically getting people out there to become more independent. And I believe that if you can understand how your bike works, you can repair it, you fix it, then your independence just rockets, and you can just go wherever you want. That was essentially when I got into cycling when I was a child. It was freedom. It was ultimate freedom. I used to sort of cycle along the coast to where I kept my boat, and I'd go sailing, and basically I didn't have to ask anyone for a lift, which was always good for me. It was being a bit independent like that. So yeah, no, it's great. So I'm a mountain biker. I love gravel riding. I ride with both my kids. I'm now getting my tennis-loving husband into cycling as well, and I'm really beginning to sort of work more around youngsters and families with disabilities, getting them to be able to cycle, because we've got so many inclusive bikes out there that if you've got access to one, then it's actually a sport that you can do as a family, which when you've got a disabled child you don't have very many things that you can do collectively. So
give me a run through of the different types. I mean, I know there's hundreds almost out there of different types of adaptive bikes that you have adapted for different disabilities, but maybe just a sort of an overview of the different types of bikes there are out there.
Totally. So basically, from my own experience, what we've started with is basically a pull-along trike, which fits onto a regular bike in much the way that all the other mainstream pull-alongs do. But rather than having a single wheel, it's got a double, which gives you that much more stability for the cyclist. You have things like weighted pedals, so that they're weighted and the child can get their foot in, and then it's easier for them to hold on. They've got then sort of fantastic bikes that you can actually get a wheelchair on the front of, which is great because a lot of youngsters, I mean, there's a lot of families where they feel that their child's in a wheelchair and they don't see how their child could sit independently. They don't need to. They just put their own chair onto the front of the bike. Looks a bit like a bike crossed with a forklift. But it's fantastic. And then what we're working towards next with Cece is basically a tandem, but again with the double wheels at the back for that stability. You can get bikes that have sort of frames that hold the core. So if your child has seizures or balance problems, you know that they are essentially strapped into place. It's a bit like having a car seat attached to the bike. So yeah, there is a huge variety. The biggest problem is the cost. So that's where we're looking at making it more accessible, and just spreading the word of it. Every time we go cycling as a family with Cece, we seem to come across another family, and they say, "I didn't even know you could do this." We give them a go, and so we're it's taking time to develop, but there will be something for families in Kent very soon. So.
Advocating the cause, and if people know that there are options out there. Brilliant.
Yeah, totally.
Cool. So let's get another one of the familiar faces on the screen, Lorraine Dixon. Welcome back to Bants and Bikes. We're so pleased to have you here.
I'm pleased to be here as well.
So we're just doing our quick introductions. As we know, many people will know you lot already because they tune in every week. Thank you to the audience as well. And actually, in the audience, why don't you just say hi in the comments and let us know where you're listening from as we go introduce our final guest, Lorraine. So tell us a little bit about yourself and your cycling background.
So I think like a lot of you listeners, I rode a bike as a child. Absolutely love that. The thing about bikes is it gives you a freedom as a child that you don't have in any other part of your life, not even what you want to eat. So I just felt free, and I just went all over the place on my bike, feeling totally safe. And I'm from back in the day when you had chrome rims. I don't know how I used them in the rain and everything, and yeah, that's another tale. And then car driving came along. You rite of passage, you learn to drive a car. But when I went off to uni, I was still riding a bike, and even when beyond uni I got a car, I was still riding for leisure. Depending on where I was working, would ride to work as a commuter as well, and just enjoyed that. I enjoyed the snow on my face, the wind, the rain, the sunshine, smelling the nature about me. Because even in the middle of a city, there's so much that's rich. So yeah, like a lot of your listeners, same sort of journey in terms of cycling.
Brilliant. Thank you. Well, we're looking to hear about more of your experience as we go on through this episode. Going to say hi to some people who are commenting. Hi to Tessa from Devon, Jules from the Wet Highlands. Hi to Helen from Nottingham, Zoe from the Surrey Hills. That used to be my homeland. Emily from Jersey. We've got some of the islanders here. Wet lockdown Leicester is Zizi. And some Surrey. Oh, there's loads of you. Thank you. Keep the messages coming in. And lots of people are mentioning the weather today as well. And even on this screen right here, we are representing from south to north. You know, I'm on the southern tip of southern Spain. Charlene's right up there north in Glasgow in Scotland. And we've all got pretty horrific weather, I think, even for me, and I've got some rain in Spain, is not what I signed up for. Charlene, very, 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 very quickly, what's the weather like with you today?
So we had snow through the night, and then it turned into sleet, and then it turned into rain, and now it is sunny. We've had all the weathers this morning. It's so weird, but it's absolutely freezing.
It all.
So
another thing in the comments, people say, so what's the weather like where you are as well? Are we all experiencing horrific weather today? Because if we are, we're going to be talking about how that shouldn't stop you from getting out on your bike anyway. And finally, we're going to welcome today's star guest. We've got Rebecca Charlton in for this special chat about motivation. I know that you've got a background in journalism, and this sort of content comes up quite often. So let everyone know who you are, please.
Yeah, it really does. I have to start by saying I'm really sorry. It's been sunny here on the South Coast all morning. I could just leave right now if you want. And the other thing I need to say to you, Fran, is you started off at the beginning of the chat saying about Zwifty indoor cycling. Turbo stuff, and I absolutely love it. I love riding indoors, so more on that later. But for anyone that doesn't know me, I'm really happy to be joining this today because I've of course been avidly watching all the ladies having a great chat over the weeks past, so it's good to be here. But I started bike racing when I was 7 across all disciplines, but absolutely loved track cycling, again inside, sorry Fran, and I really got the bug, and then I stopped racing while I went to university and did a degree in journalism. And then I moved back into cycling as a journalist and a presenter, and I now present the Women's Tour on ITV. I report for the Tour of Britain, a lot of British racing and a lot of track racing as well for BBC Sport. So yeah, my whole life really has been about bikes.
Excellent. Well, we're delighted to have you on. Thanks for joining us today. I'm pleased to see that we've got somebody tuning in from Ireland. So the British nations are truly being represented. Anyone from Wales in the audience today? And Helen thinks that December is a great time of year to hunker down indoors and plan cycling expeditions for the new year. It's a great little tip, that one, actually, Helen. And I think we'll be going into that in more detail later on with our panelists here. So now that you've all introduced yourselves, I wonder, who of you has ever really given a fantastic excuse or heard a great excuse for not cycling in the winter? Anything that comes to mind, pop your hand up where you've really pulled one out the bag where you didn't want to be doing this. No, well, Fran's like, no. Why would I not? Why would I?
I think Charlene's probably heard all my excuses. Maybe she can try mine.
It's too icy.
It's too icy. But is that an excuse, Charlene? Or is there some legitimacy in that?
Well, it can be an excuse. It can be. But no, unless I'm feeling a little bit under the weather, that's yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's a fine line, isn't there, between an excuse and then a genuine cause for concern, because as we discussed in a previous episode, getting out in sort of minus anything below 2 degrees or so, a high chance of hitting icy patches, and that can be extremely dangerous. Rebecca, I know that you've ridden with clubs quite a lot. And what's the general recommendation for cycling in getting towards the zeros?
I feel really strongly about this actually, and it's differentiating, like you say, between that fine line of when you're needing to admit to yourself that you are maybe making excuses and you need to just get out there, and you'll love being out there and you'll be really grateful that you did. And then there's other times where I would deem it too dangerous to go out, and I think risking riding on ice is never worth it. And I have sadly experienced so many people saying, okay, the club has decided that it's dangerous to take a group out. I know obviously COVID times are different at the moment, but in previous years, and a couple of people have said, well, I don't want to make an excuse, I'm going to go out. And unfortunately, they've had quite a nasty crash and really injured themselves. So I would say differentiate between whether you're just making excuses and whether it is actually a risk to go out.
I'm really glad we're starting with this, actually, because we're going to go into other reasons why you might stay indoors later on. But I think setting up the discussion for when you genuinely maybe shouldn't be going out on a bike, much as we want to encourage it and motivate it, is worth defining. Fran, you've got your hand up there.
Well, I also think we're talking about riding. Riding is a very general term. So yes, I agree with Becca and Charlene about riding in ice. But what I would do is I would change my style of riding. You know, so for example, I appreciate many people don't have that luxury. Their road bike's their road bike. But for me, winter, the off-road comes into its own, whether that be gravel riding. I would normally be racing CX or winter at a national level. Cyclocross, yeah, exactly, or winter. And driving all over the country, racing that nationally, or even just mountain biking in your local woods where, you know, it's safe. But yes, I do agree with the whole, I wouldn't be, you know, risking it off-road, on-road, sorry.
And Zoe, she agrees with you. She says mountain biking, so that conditions can be different in the woods. That's a very, you know, it is true. You've got to differentiate between the disciplines there. I don't think anyone's going to be doing any velodrome cycling in the ice, are they? And actually, wind is something that I wanted to bring up because it's something that I would never have thought about previously when I lived back in Surrey. But down here in southern Spain, we're one of the windiest points in Europe, and I imagine people that live in really hilly areas with exposed hills. I now have to check the wind forecast before I go out cycling, because one time I was ignorant enough to go out when it looked pretty windy, crested the top of a hill, and it was so windy up there that I had to get off my bike. I was holding my bike and the wind was blowing it and flicking it from under my hands. It was so dangerous. I actually hitchhiked my way down a mountain, up by a lovely English woman who was a bit like, you coast dwellers, you just don't understand. You shouldn't be coming up here in the wind. But it's curious. Fran, yeah.
But Anna, do you not check the wind anyway? So I am obsessed with the weather as a cyclist, partly because one of the very first road rides I ever did, I was like, right, I'm really fit. I do mountain biking. I run a lot. I do triathlon. I can ride 50 miles on the road. Followed a route, 25 miles out, turned around, had no money, had no food, realised I was riding 25 miles back into a block headwind with no food and no money. Like, this was probably 15 years ago now. The worst thing I ever did. So now I'm obsessed with the weather. Before I ride, I will check the weather, and the weather dictates where I ride. So I will always ride headwind out, tailwind home. And that could mean you end up doing similar routes for a few months in a row, because that's where the wind's coming from. So unless the wind speed's under 5 miles an hour, where you're not really going to notice an impact, I'm obsessed with the weather, I'm afraid.
Yeah, no, I mean, we've discovered that I'm not quite as prepared and organised as you in general as a person, but there's some great tips there. Yeah, Rebecca, you wanted to expand on that?
Well, this won't surprise you, Anna, in my organisation, but I'm exactly the same as Fran, and more so in recent years. I think looking at the times that I have made mistakes, especially with the clothing that I've put on, and realised that a ride can become quite miserable if you're not dressed for it. And I think it works both ways, because recently a few people have been commenting on my Instagram saying, are you crazy? You've gone out without gloves, you haven't got overshoes on. And actually, the weather forecast has been grim. And then on the morning, it switched to 14 degrees by sort of 9 o'clock in the morning. And actually, I haven't wanted to overdress, because then I hate that feeling that you've then got way too sweaty and end up cold in the end anyway. So I'm really up for always checking the forecast, because something like the wind chill, it really can make a difference to how many layers you need to put on. So I've become an avid believer in always checking the weather apps.
Yeah, and that's, like you say, you can then prepare for it. So rather than having a miserable experience, it ends up not being an excuse to not ride. so long as you are prepared for it. So checking the weather, I think we've now established that as something vital to do, especially as you go into the winter months, in advance of a ride. What other things will you be prepping to make sure that you stay motivated and you actually get out? Who has like a preparation routine? Vicky?
Yeah, so I mean, this sort of plays to my mechanics side. I think it's about making sure that you've got everything with you. A bit like when it's bad weather and the AA tell you to go out in your car with sort of a flask and so on. It's the same with your bike. It's make sure that you've got all the stuff that you need and you're able to repair any problems that arise quickly, because once you stop when it's bad weather, you can get cold so easily. And make sure you've got things like in your kit with you, perhaps something like a bivvy bag, so that if you do have a problem and you start losing that heat, you can warm up, you can keep warm while somebody else has a problem. So yeah, for me it really brings mechanics to the fore, making sure you know how to change your puncture, change your tire, repair your or change to a single speed if you've got problems with your gears. It's really, really vital in the winter.
And I think that's not just a practical solution, it's probably quite a psychological one as well. If you know that you're empowered with those skills to sort yourself out, then that's going to give you a boost of confidence to even getting out in the first place.
Yeah.
Lorraine, you had something you wanted to add there?
I would totally agree with what Vicky's saying about making sure your bike's checked. I think, particularly before the winter, it's a really good idea to have a full service on your bike, if you're able to do that, just to make sure that it's going to take you through the terrible, terrible weather. The other thing I do when I go out and about, particularly in winter, is just make sure I have a bit of money with me, just in case things go wrong, and I can and my phone, so that I can call for a taxi, because even in the middle of a city, I could end up at the other part of the city, well away from where I live. And it's just about those little practical things that I know that I'll be okay if something drastic happens and it's a bit more difficult to do at the side of the road than, say, a puncture. If I don't know, my hydraulics went on my disc brake, then that'd be something that'd be a bit difficult to do on the side of the road. Knowing that I can get home, I think is quite key, and just enables me to feel free to go out and about, no matter what the weather's like, really.
Great. And Rebecca, was that your hand hovering there?
Yeah, yes, it was. Yeah, just more agreement, really. But I think the thing for me that can really stop me getting out of the door is those little organisational things. And I always take out 2 spare tubes when I'm road riding, and a mini pump and tyre levers as well, because I find that a lot easier. And just losing one of those things. So say if I hadn't got organised after the previous ride, shoved everything in one pocket that I can't find when I want to get out the door, that can actually stop me meeting up with someone going for a ride. And so I think we might see these things as quite small, but as you were just both saying, you don't want to get caught out without the ability to get yourself home, and then that can make a ride feel quite daunting if you're not well equipped. So I think, again, that organisation is huge. And I just saw in the comment section as well, someone asking what weather app I use, and I literally use the one that just comes up on my iPhone, and it's scarily accurate, actually. I think it's weather.com.
Brilliant. Yeah, I think I often use just Google for the weather, and I remember, like, when I was younger, we always used to laugh at how inaccurate the weather was, but I think technology has improved these days, and things can be pretty up to date. And Charlene, who do you normally use weather-wise?
I use Met Office, and it's more accurate than the iPhone 1 in my eyes. For Scotland anyway. I just want to add to the weather thing, and I was doing most of my riding when I actually lived at home in Fife, and I always had a route that I would go on that would be close to the coast, close to the coast. I would go coastal roads, and also I would stay away from little lanes, wee lanes. Stay away from that. Stayed on the main roads, because the laney rides were the ones where you would find most of the ice. If you were going to come across that, you know, sometimes you get the weather and it's not quite icy. You don't think it's going to be icy, but you might get to a little shaded part of a road and that just one bit is icy. So you've just got to be really mindful. If every other road is fine, there might be one little corner that's got some ice on it. So I mean, it doesn't mean that you're riding the whole ride like this, but you just have to be really vigilant and choose your routes wisely as well. Another motivational tip, just about kit as well. I'd always have my kit. If you're getting up in the morning to do it, or you thought, right, I'm going to go out for a ride tomorrow morning, I would just get my kit out and put it in a pile. This is no joke, in front of my door, like my bedroom door. So you'd basically trip over it, you have to put it on. You basically fall into it. So it's there for you to get straight into it. There's no other option. I mean, obviously, this is if it's raining. You're fine if it's raining. You just need to man up a wee bit. I mean, if I didn't go out when it was raining in Glasgow, I'd never be going out on my bike. It rains literally almost every day. But yeah, you just have to, you know, wear the correct clothing, and just once you're out there, try to just change your mindset. Get out of that, it's raining, and just be like, I'm on my bike and I'm loving it. And like you said, Lorraine, I've got the wind in my face and I've got the snow in my face and I'm loving it. And that's so true, because when you said that, I was like, that sounds horrific. And then I was like, it sounds horrific, but see when you're actually on your bike, unless it's like a really long ride and you're getting freezing. If it's like, you know, a reasonable ride and you're not going to get too cold, it actually feels really nice. It feels refreshing. You feel alive. So don't be afraid of the rain. That's my tip.
I like that. And just quickly going back to weather apps, Fran, what do you use?
I use all the weather apps. I use BBC, I use the Met Office, and I use a Norwegian one. And I keep looking at weather apps until I get the weather that I want. I always joke that the BBC's rubbish, and if anyone else did their job as bad as Michael Fish, they'd be fired. The Norwegian one's supposed to be super accurate because it's Scandinavian. Don't know why that helps us in the UK, but you know it does. So I just look at all the weather apps. But just quickly on Charlene's thing about kit as well is we've got quite a few blogs on our website, the Vela Vixen website, about what kit to wear in what weather conditions, because I've noticed on the Vela Vixen Facebook chat recently, a lot of women have been going out underdressed and they're confused as to what to wear. I firmly believe you never need to wear more than 3 layers, even in the coldest winter. It's just how thick they are. Because if you wear too much, you end up, and I've done it in the past, you can't move, and then you end up rigid on your bike, your shoulders lock, and you've got no control over anything. So we've got some blogs and tips on our website, and people can always email me directly. I have a bunch of friends that will message me on a Saturday morning and say, I'm going out on my bike, what do I need to wear? And I like, right, you need to wear your Climb and Conquer coat, your base layer, and you'll be fine.
Yeah, and like you say as well, with just 3 layers, not only do you end up puffing up perhaps, but you end up getting warm when you start cycling. So there's an art to layering, but I know we've discussed this in previous episodes. So if you're just tuning in now for the first time, do go and have a look back over our previous episodes, because we've gone into this in quite some detail. So I just want to set a scenario. Charlene's already given a little bit away, but you want to go for a ride in the morning. You decided this the night before. It's the only time of day that you're going to be able to go, and your alarm goes off and it's early and you're tired and it's miserable outside and it's cold, and in the end maybe you decide you can't be bothered. Has anyone ever been in that scenario? Okay, so we've all been there. To the audience, have you guys been in that scenario? I'm pretty sure you have. What's the solution though? Because right here, we've got a panel of women who do manage to get themselves out and going cycling. So how do you battle through that? Shall we start with Vicky?
So this is where first of all, I remember that actually once I'm 5 minutes into a cycle, because I live in a valley, or for Kent, it's a valley anyway, but anywhere I go from my house is up a hill. And I know that within 5 minutes I will be warm. But also I know that I will beat myself up massively and feel very guilty if I don't go at all. And I just think about how great I'm going to feel afterwards. Invariably, if invariably the woods or the roads are quieter when it's horrible weather, and that's just bliss. It's lovely. You just feel smug. It feels a bit like you're sticking two fingers up at the weather and saying, "Sod you, I can go." So yeah, it's mainly. It's psychological for me. It's remembering, A, physically I will be warm, and B, knowing that I will feel so much better and I will feel really proud and happy when I've been.
Yeah, because getting out is an amazing feeling no matter what, but knowing that you've achieved it in the face of adversity,
yeah,
you get an extra hero feel on top of that.
Yeah, completely. You're winning. Yeah, absolutely winning. It's brilliant. It's
Lorraine, what about you?
I don't know if I could better what Vicky said. I think it is psychological. I think what helps me is having my clothes set up from the night before, so I know what I'm going to be wearing. I will have checked out the weather. I'll have listened to the weather on after the news on the telly, but I'll also use Weather Live, which is my go-to weather app. But yeah, and I'll set out my clothes accordingly, and then you wake up, it's grey, it's rainy, and you really do have to push yourself to go out. But it is remembering, like Vicky said, remembering that you actually enjoy this. And for me, it's kind of tying into that feeling of when I was a child, and you just feel so free. So it is, you know, someone else mentioned about the mindset. It is the mindset, and that, you know, if you just stay in, you really do feel like you've missed out. You've missed out on life, and you've missed out on that ability to just get the blood pumping and racing, and just connecting with life, really.
Yeah, love it. Some practical tips and some motivational tips coming out in this. Rebecca, what's your get out of bed and get out the door advice?
It's not always get out of the door at the moment, to be honest. And I think the first thing I'd say, and going back to what Fran picked up on, is it's not about judging what kind of discipline you're doing. I do a lot on the turbo trainer, and I think a lot of people say, "Oh, that's so good, you're so good," because you're doing all this training. But I actually just really enjoy it, because I will schedule a meetup, often with my mum at the moment, and that gives us a chance to chat on the Discord through the headphones, the app that sort of a lot of gamers use, which I've recently discovered. So we have a chat, we get out of bed, we motivate each other to get up, and we ride most days. And that means that if the weather really is grim and I don't get out the door, I've scheduled something. And you know what? I'll never let somebody else down, even if I've got that psychology of what if I don't want to get out of bed. I'll always get out of bed for somebody else, a friend, a family member, someone I want to ride with. So for me, it's about making it fun and making a plan that I'm not going to cancel.
Yeah, I think you've really tapped onto two good points there. Riding indoors, if you don't fancy getting outside, is a perfectly fantastic solution. And also booking a buddy. Booking in with someone, you know that if you said that you're going to meet up at 10 o'clock, you're not going to leave them there waiting on the street corner whilst you stay in bed like, do you know what, can't be bothered. I find that a great motivator, so thanks for bringing that one up. Charlene, I mean, you mentioned already about leaving your clothes at the door so you trip over them. Anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, you've just got to man up sometimes, and just what I said before, you have to get yourself in that mindset and just say, right, I'm going to get out the door. I don't want to go, but I know that when I'm actually out on the ride, it's going to be amazing. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be fun. And then I can have my takeaway after. You know, you can have your treat after. Like, whatever motivation you've got, just use that. Just use that, especially in the winter.
That's exactly it. I think like having a treat, rewarding yourself can be such a powerful tool as well. Somebody, one of my colleagues from Cycling UK, mentioned that earlier. They were just like, every pedal stroke is a pedal stroke closer to a bite out of a shortbread mince pie. It's like, if you think about that, it helps you keep going. Fran, what do you use to help yourself get out of bed and ride if you're not feeling lit?
So mine's always, it's rare for me to wake up and not want to go out. I can look at the weather a few days in advance and be sad that it's going to be rainy on my day off, but I like planning adventures. So I might do, for example, I've got an obsession with windmills. So we've got quite a lot of windmills around us. So I planned one day, I did a windmill ride where I went to hunt out all these windmills and take pictures of them. Or I might do, I don't know, just pick up a challenge or something that's just a little bit different. I did mention earlier before we went live about Strava tiles. Now, this isn't something I've done, but it's quite a good winter tool, really. It's all about, the map is set up into segments and you can see which tiles you've ticked off by riding them. So then it makes you basically go out and explore to tick these tiles off. So it's just having something that's a little bit different rather than just thinking, oh, I'm going to go and ride for 2 hours in the rain.
I mean, for some people, it's marshmallow loaded hot chocolates, and for others, it's windmills. We're all different. Find what works for you and stick to it. And that definitely helped motivate you.
That along with the kit thing, which obviously I would say working for Velovixen, but I have noticed Helen Grimster's made a comment about, I treated myself to the best winter kit I could afford to make me look fabulous. So I want to go out and show it off, always full on matchy, which is very true. You put on nice clothes, whether that be your cycling kit, others it's your dancing clothes, which we can't really do at the minute. But, you know, if you've got good kit, then you feel nice. You want to go out. You don't want it lying on the bedroom floor.
I always hark back to this one, actually, speaking to Joanna Rousel-Shand. So she's a MBE Olympic gold medalist, however many times over, world champion cyclist. And I remember meeting her at a cycling club, like a local time trial once, and she'd just been given her new team kit. And she was like, it's just so pretty. It was like a blue kit. And she's like, it just makes me want to ride faster. And I'm like, well, if it works for you, then I don't think any of us can dispute that. Tessa has commented here, I like this one. I put my bike by the front door and then can't face the morning walk of shame to put it back without having been out. That's really awesome. And we've sort of touched a little bit on goal setting. Do any of you use sort of goal setting techniques, like say maybe picking a challenge or something like that, maybe slightly longer term, that will keep you day-to-day cycling because you've got an objective further on? Lorraine, yeah.
So for me, most of my day cycling, it tends to be commuter. But sometimes I want to do something really interesting, and I remember mentioning previously that I have done sportives, not so much this year, but I have done sportives, and so some of the goals that I have, particularly over the winter before sportive season starts. Sportives are kind of long endurance rides where you're testing yourself. You're not competing with anybody or racing anybody. It's about your own testing yourself, really. And they generally start around spring, March to September, October. So over the winter, I will set myself goals. If I know my longest sportive is going to be, say, 60 miles, or I'd love to do 100 miles. 60 has been the most I've been able to do. But if I set myself the goal of 100, then over the winter I will work up towards that as much as I can do, because I guess the guidance generally is, in terms of a sportive, as long as you can do at least 3/4 of that or 80% of that, adrenaline will get you through the rest. So it's about kind of working to work as much as I can towards that particular goal. So that's the sort of goal that I would set myself personally, generally being a commuter rider, but just wanting to do something else to kind of push me in terms of my cycling.
And everybody's different. That goal can be whatever you choose it to be. Fran, what do you use?
For a few years, I did have just an annual mileage goal, which then you can get to winter and kind of see where you are and either panic or decide you're going to give up. But for me, once I set a goal, I will achieve it. I don't often fail in my attempts to achieve my goals. The last few years, because I've raced cyclocross all winter, I haven't really had one. So for me, it's been more race specific. But it's cycling for me in winter really it's all about my mental health. You know, it's all about, for me, being outside, being with nature, fresh air clears my brain from any stresses really. So as time goes on, I have less goal focused aims really.
Yeah. And like, you know, we're touching on different people from different backgrounds, different motivations. Vicky, what about your point of view from an adaptive cycles world, I suppose, and goal setting? Are there differences? Are there commonalities?
Yeah, I think from my perspective, it's as a mother of a child with special needs and a child with different abilities, it's about proving to, or not even proving, but just demonstrating to the rest of the world that they aren't something that needs to be wrapped up in cotton wool, that they it's really good. I think a lot of people are frightened. They think, well, maybe they'd get too cold or whatever. But if you've wrapped your child up well and you're out there, it's showing them that they don't have to be afraid of any part of life, that they can do their hobby, they can do what they want. So it's showing them that they are just the same. And that's the brilliant thing about inclusive cycling and adaptive cycling, is that it's a real leveler. People are exactly the same. Just because my child's on a bike that looks slightly different to somebody else's doesn't mean they can't. I mean, this weekend, actually, I'm really, really excited about this. I'm meeting a friend who I met last weekend when I noticed that she had the same pull-along trike as I have. And turns out we have daughters the same age, go to different schools, and we're going to meet up, go for a cycle, and then and just sort of and get together. But I think it's going to be incredibly powerful. And it's about showing that they are just the same as everyone else. And with the right kit and the right mental attitude, why shouldn't they enjoy cycling in the cold and the wet?
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to build on the comment that you have already been making about preparing in advance, whether it's tripping over your clothes, tripping over your bikes, whatever that might be. But that can happen in the middle of the day as well. So I'm just using myself as the example here, because I know that I want to go for a ride a little bit later on after work. I'll probably get 45 minutes of daylight. Now, if I'm actually going to get myself out the door, because you sort of settle into that kind of lethargic, I've been at the laptop all day feeling, I'm going to go put on my kit now, or after this, don't worry, after we've been in a live video, and then I'll be sitting in my kit ready for when it's time to clock off. It just makes it that much easier to get out. So hopefully find that a useful tip. And talking of like mindset and goal setting, Charlene, I just want to pick your brains on this a little bit, because as an instructor, you must get a lot of clients that it's not for not having the right kit, it's not for not having the practical solutions in place. They need a little bit more of psychological motivation. So what sort of tricks do you use? What sort of things do you say to people?
Well, so I used to be a cycling coach. I can still coach cycling, but I'm more in the fitness avenue now. And of course, I've been coached as well. So you've seen pretty much every excuse under the sun. Some of them are genuine and, can be slightly worrying for on the mental health side. When you really don't want to go out on your bike, and when someone's training really hard and they're just like, I just don't want to go out on my bike. Maybe actually what you need is a little bit of time off, a little bit of rest. If you are cycling all the time, remember, when you're cycling and when you're being active, you need to balance this out with a little bit of rest. So yes, we're trying to encourage you to go outside, but you've got to take everything into consideration. Maybe you're doing a little bit too much as well, and you do need a little rest. So sometimes you have to go easy on yourself and not feel the guilt of not going outside. We are talking about the rain, but honestly, up here, it is a lot of the time rain, all the time. So, you know, you can understand when someone goes, okay, I'm going to have a day off. I've literally been out 4 days in a row and it's rained constant for 4 days in a row and I just need a break. And you're like, okay, go on the turbo instead, or do an at-home HIIT, or go and do some yoga, or go and move in a different kind of way. But yeah, you do get lots of different excuses. And the mental health side is a difficult one, because sometimes it's motivation that they need. And come on, that other rider is going to be, you know, is going to be outside training today. If you don't get out, they're going to be training. Or they might need, or just, you know, if you don't go out today, then you're probably not going to go out tomorrow. You know, even if you're not professionally training, it's just a case of keeping in a good routine. Okay, so if you start going down this downward spiral now, you need to remember that you really, really need to stay on the right path. And if it is a rest you need, take like 3 or 4 days. Don't just take 1 day. You obviously need a long time. So that rest that you take is going to be more beneficial than just pushing through sometimes. So it's really important to understand why you don't want to go outside. Is it just because of the rain, or is it all a bit too much and you need a rest? So really important to know the difference.
Knowing your body. And I've seen you nodding along ferociously there, Rebecca.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that is such an important point. And something else that leads me to pick up on is a few of us have already mentioned the word guilt. And I think that although you've got to look at what your personal motivation is, I try and remove that guilt, because I grew up racing, and I think you get into a routine where everything, and Charlene's nodding because of course you had a much higher level cycling career than I did, and you have to decide whether you are motivated by what result you're driven to get in that next race, or whether you're just driven by the guilt and self-loathing if you don't do it, and that can become very negative. So I think you've got to look at what your goal is and almost stick to your plan and your motivations without looking around and judging yourself and putting guilt on your shoulders for what everybody else is or isn't doing. And I think if you look at Charlene's schedule when she was racing at the level she was, of course she couldn't have any excuses. She would have to go out and do several hours out on the road or the turbo, and she had to do that. But that doesn't mean that now I'm enjoying cycling as an amateur rider, I should look at a pro schedule and beat myself up because I didn't ride for 4 hours. And I think a lot of people fall into that trap, especially with the prevalence of social media and Instagram ideals, where actually you don't know what that person's gone and done, or you might be looking at a pro rider's account, but you can't then feel bad that you didn't do something on a par with them. Because I find that, you know, you might have gone out and done a really lovely morning, had a social ride, stopped for a lovely coffee and cake, and then why would you want to go on social media and think that you're a lesser person because you didn't do the same as somebody else did? You know, they might be training for a stage race, you might be out there for the enjoyment. So I think it's important to always bring it back to why you are riding, because not everybody needs to go out and batter themselves. Some people, there's a time and a place for it. Other people are there for the social, which is definitely me. And something that I've started doing, and I know I'm talking a lot about indoor training because I'm a bit obsessed with it at the moment in the pandemic, but I've put all my stats and data online. And me a few years ago, I possibly wouldn't have wanted to do that, but I've just put everything out there because I just think, do you know what? If I'm going to sit here and tell everybody, don't judge yourself, don't worry about, you know, where you sit in that scale as long as you're enjoying it, you know, I want to stay true to that. And so anyone can go and have a look at what I've done. And sometimes me and my mum, as I say, we potter around on Zwift and we ride under 100 watts and we're really proud of ourselves. And I don't think anyone should take that away from you.
What's your favourite watt, Rebecca?
A low one.
I think such an important point, and people are really cheering that in the comments. And if anyone watching this also agrees, do put your comments in, because I think it's really, really important that whilst, yes, the point of this chat is to motivate people, we don't want people to be putting pressure on themselves and being hard on themselves. That is not what and that's not what the amazing cycling community is all about either. You know, I think we've all made friends through cycling. We've all got a community around us. And how many of them would point the finger at you and be like, you did a rubbish training ride today? I mean, yeah, no. Oh, no, you don't have a friend like that. Is that what you put your hand up for, Charlene? I would.
No, I've got a point. Okay, so just quickly, so when you really want to do a session, and it's really rainy, and for example, like it's just been raining all week and you're just feeling a little bit lack of motivation and you're like, I just can't go out. Maybe try doing a different kind of exercise. Like and in the winter, I love to do cross training. So you can do some running, you can go out and do some running, you can do some circuits at home or in your garden, even in the rain. Like if you are working hard, you're gonna be sweating, you're probably gonna be warmer running and doing your HIIT than you are cycling, because you've got the wind, you've got that wind factor as well. So you can mix up your training over the winter. I used to do that all the time, and I really, really recommend it, just because it's just a little bit of something different and you just feel really refreshed after it. So, and then you'll really be looking forward to getting back on your bike. So another tip.
And I think this is a question, and actually anybody who'd like to get some questions in, now's your time to do so. We'll try and answer as many live as possible. Charlene, I think this is probably one for you. I'm trying to do 20 to 25 miles a day with a day off, new to cycling. What is a good ratio of cycling to rest for beginners?
It all depends on how long you've been riding, what type of roads you're riding. But I would definitely say you must have at least 2 rest days a week. Definitely factor 2 rest days in. And in those rest days, stretch. Stretch. Because if you're new at cycling and you're not stretching, you are going to get sore knees. So please, everyone's like, that's me. But yeah, please, in those 2 days that you take a rest, I would do like 3 days on, one like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday riding, maybe a Thursday rest, Friday, Saturday, or you can do your if you like going out at the weekend, I don't know if you want to keep it for family time or if that's when you've got all your time to ride, you can do your Saturday, Sunday riding, and then you can take your rest days the Monday and the Friday. So then you're you're training on the Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So you can split it up like that. But really, really important. And just like maybe to keep on top of it, a little even 5-minute stretch of the bum, of the hamstrings, and of your hip flexors. Just even if you can just do those 3 things as soon as you get off the bike, that'll help you in the long run. So really important to stretch as well for you. Although you're focusing on the cycling, as I've said before, you need to have that work rest balance. So it's not just work.
Charlene's given us some amazing fitness tips for beginners in 1-minute videos, which we posted on the Cycling UK Facebook page. We've also got other tips there covering cycling on the road, some bike mechanics and basic kit things that you need. So if you'd like some quick tips, go and check them out after this. Earlier on, I think this is probably one for you, Helen, but other of you might want to jump in as well. So this is probably one for you, Fran, is from Helen, but something others might want to jump in on as well. What kit would you recommend to wear to keep you warm? From Helen Grimster. And I was going to say as well, we've gone through this in detail in some of the other episodes. So a quick sum up.
I guess the top tip would be I would invest in a good winter coat. I mean, you know, I can talk about kit till the cows go home, but if you invest in a good winter coat, it should see you through from, depending generally, October through till about March. then, you know, how little or as much as you want to layer up underneath it. So something like the Velvixen or the Stolen Goat Climb and Conquer coats, they're top notch. And you are going to have to spend a little bit of money to get something that's good quality. You know, there are cheaper things available.
Rebecca,
but yeah.
waving away.
I just wanted to add one thing to that. I noticed a few people saying about cold feet, and I have suffered with my feet going cold and numb on long bike rides in the winter, and I have tried absolutely everything. And the one mistake I think a lot of people make is layering up loads of warm socks, and Fran's nodding here, under their shoes. Then the shoes don't fit properly, they become too tight, and that can limit your circulation, which is why you might think, well, I've put all these merino woolly socks on to stay snug and now I can't feel my toes. It's because it actually hinders that circulation. So that's one thing I'd say, get the products right, but also make sure things fit.
Thank you, Rebecca. We're not laughing at you. That's actually really brilliant tip. It's just as people are commenting in the private chat, these panelists, because they've got something to say that's not about kit, and it seems to come up every week. Vicky, I think it's your turn to now wade in on this discussion.
So mine is actually about kit. So mine's about cold hands, because I get really cold hands, and where once they've got cold, I find it incredibly hard to warm them up again. So as well as warm gloves, I have these things which are nicked from the horse riding world, and they're basically hand and wrist warmers. So they come under your glove and go to there. And I find if I keep that section of my wrist warm, my hands don't get so cold. So it's a friend of mine told me about it a couple of years ago, and it's completely revolutionary.
A really good point, actually, because the reverse of that, I remember when I used to get too hot after training, I was recommended to pour cold water on this part of your wrist, because that's a really good for regulating your body temperature. Everyone seems to have something to say here. We're going to move on to comments. So Lorraine, and then Fran, and Charlene, and then we'll move on to comments. So Lorraine, what do you want to
say? People have told us about feet, hands, my head generally gets cold, and if my head is cold, then the rest of me is cold. So I tend to have a little merino skull cap, which I'm wearing. This one's the DHB ones, but I'm sure Velvixen have plenty of them, and all sorts of, but merino wool, love that, you know, because it doesn't get you too sweaty when you start warming up, and it just keeps you nice and toasty as well.
Oh, so my comments now morphed as to what Lorraine's just said. Top tip, people like wearing merino wool base layers. They only work if you're not a heavy sweater. If you're a heavy sweater, which I am, don't wear a merino base layer. It soaks up the sweat and it keeps you cold. So merino is only good for dry temperatures, but it's something that a lot of people think, oh, merino is really good. It's not as a base layer if you're a heavy sweater.
Excellent. And Charlene, you had something that you wanted to say? Did you?
I mean, the only thing really that's been helping me with my cold feet and hands are my cold shower every morning. Said it every week, gotta get it in there. My cold shower every morning, 30 seconds, 3 minutes after your hot shower. That's my advice. We're fine outside in the snow this morning.
I mean, has anybody been convinced by Charlene's love of cold showers and cold swims in the weeks that we've been chatting to her? Has anybody tried it? If they have, let us know in the comments. Vicky, Kate would like to know, what is the make of those arm warmers or wrist warmers?
So would I.
Yes, I'm just quickly trying to Google them. That's why I was looking down. They're SC, it's called. They hang on, let me just have a quick look. Yeah, we'll put it in afterwards. Yeah.
Kate, we'll find out and we'll get it in the comments afterwards. So just come back here in a few minutes' time after the show. Okay, we're getting to the lovely bit now where you guys are asked to pick out a comment or a question that you feel like hasn't been answered, or a comment that stood out to you in the show so far. So we're going to end it with you reading out those comments. Fran, would you like to go first?
Yes, I have to go with Tessa Fincher. My goals are freedom and adventure in the great outdoors. You know, I'm a firm believer in fresh air and the the kind of mental health benefits it gives you. So that's the one for me.
And the same person, actually, Charlene, you'll be delighted. She's actually finishing her shower with cold water now. What have you done?
Tessa, we love it. Come and join the cold water swimming crew.
Yes, Tessa, that has to be my favourite comment of the day. I'm actually finishing my shower. Yes, well, making you feel good, and it's bringing joy to you.
To help motivate with your cycling as well, so it's win-win here. We knew you'd love that comment, Charlene, but is there anything else that you picked out that you'd like to talk about?
Let's have a look. Can you come back to me?
Yeah, we'll come back to you. Lorraine, I know there was one that you wanted particularly to speak about.
I loved Kerry Bramford-Hale's comment when we were talking about goal setting and adventure plans. I loved how it wasn't just about her individually, it was about including the kids as well. And it kind of my eyes lit on that, especially when Vicky was speaking as well, including the kids in the goal setting. The kids keep you kind of righteous when it comes to, when you're not doing it, they're going to go, and keep you on the straight and narrow. So I love that.
Excellent. Yeah. Thanks, Lorraine. Thank you, Kerry. Rebecca, what would you like to pull out?
If you didn't notice already, I'm scrolling through and reading them all now.
Don't get too sucked down the rabbit hole.
I'm just enjoying all the comments. I'm just.
Vicky, would you like to tell us about the wrist warmers? You've got the information now.
Yes, I have found them. They're by a company called Storm Chase, and they only have two options, and they're called horse riding wrist warmers. So they've actually got more colours now too, but they're brilliant. They've been really, really good. So yeah.
Do you remember in the 80s when it was ankle warmer, brightly coloured ankle warmers, that thing?
Yes.
The 2020 will be.
Yeah, exactly. That and a gilet. I often look completely bonkers because I'll be wearing a gilet, a short sleeve merino, possibly even a t-shirt or a 3/4, and then wrist warmers. So I've got all these exposed bits of skin where I'm regulating my heat, but then keeping my core and my wrists warm. Yeah, I'm slightly mad.
There's an art to layering. Sounds like you've
definitely.
All artists are a little bit mad anyway, aren't they?
Yes, exactly.
Right, Charlene, Rebecca, your time's running out. Charlene will move to you from it.
Okay, got one. I really like this comment. Taking spare clothes, shoes as well to change into after a ride if driven to ride. That's from Zoe, and really, really important because if you're commuting to work, you need to have all your spare clothes, socks. Don't forget your pants as well. One that you always forget. But yeah, really important to take spare clothes when you are getting changed after, especially pants and socks.
That's a great tip there. Yeah, and I think Zoe's definitely a mountain biker. From some of her comments she said about the Surrey Hills, and quite often you will drive to a location to cycle. So yeah, thinking about how you're going to feel when you're coming back, vitally important. And finally, Rebecca.
Yep, don't forget your pants. So I've picked this comment from Kate Rose. I'm a fair weather cyclist. Whoop, whoop. I'm a gardener by trade and I run, so I'm outside in all weathers. I just can't motivate myself to get out on the bike. First of all, absolutely no shame from me in being a fair weather cyclist. But I think it is quite rare. Well, sorry, Charlene, if it's not rare for you in Scotland, but it is quite rare. I think that it's just horrendous weather day after day after day. So if you're planning a ride that you really enjoy and you're waiting for the dry days, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And it sounds like you're always outside being active anyway. So it's an applause from me.
Love it. And how could I not pick this one to end the show on? Hopefully we all feel the same here as well. Nicola Hobbs, she says, you've all inspired me to go out for a ride. Thank you. Thank you, Nicola. Thanks to all of our panellists today. Please do join us this time next week, 1 till 2, where we'll be talking about route planning. It's an extremely popular topic amongst our group. Get asked about it all the time. So we're going to be uncovering all that we know, sharing our expertise, and also hearing your comments and your questions as well. So see you then, and thank you, everyone. Bye.